We've all been there, haven't we? The exec teams in a room talking about strategy, growth, transformation, customer experience, while the delivery teams downstairs talking about sprint goals, user stories, and Jira tickets. Somewhere in the middle, there's a big gap. And that gap is where most projects go wrong. See, strategy explains why we're doing something, and delivery explains how we're doing it. But unless someone connects those dots, the vision really makes it all the way through to the final product. That's where business analysis comes in. In this episode, we're diving into what I call the missing middle, the space between strategy and delivery, and how we as BAs can bridge that gap using the right mindset, deliverables, and tools.
The Better Business Analysis Institute
presents the Better Business Analysis podcast with
Benjamen Walsh.
Welcome back, everyone. That's right. We're talking about the missing middle today, bridging strategy and delivery. And I'm going to talk to the BAs out there, of course, who listen. But this is really important for any business leader to understand, or anyone in the business. Let's jump into part one, why the gap exists. Let's start with the reality. In most organizations, there's a clear line between strategic planning and project delivery. They're usually different towers. They're sometimes in different buildings. Leaders are focused on the big picture: market share, innovation, revenue, customer growth. And this was my world when I was a general manager for a consultancy company. That's the kind of conversations we would have. Meanwhile, delivery teams, no matter how mature, are deep in the trenches. They're either building, planning, testing, and shipping features, even though I don't like that term. They're delivering value to customers, or they think they're delivering value to customers. And the problem is, they often don't speak the same language or even hang around with the same type of people. Executives talk about transforming customer experience, and developers here building a new app. And somewhere between those two interpretations, the intent gets lost. And so when a BA is dropped into a project, that's already started, which, let's face it, happens a lot. It's like being asked to translate a half-finished sentence in some ways. Our job as BAs is to complete that sentence, to connect why we're doing something to how it's actually going to get delivered. So looking at part two, the BA here is the translator. Someone needs to do this. This could be a product manager. Think of yourself as a bridge between two worlds. On one side, you've got the strategy, the vision, the goals, the business drivers, all that great stuff, which is what I talk about often, that you need to be a business strategist to be a better BA. And on the other side of the bridge, you've got delivery, the backlogs, the sprints, the deadlines, the best practice, the development cycles. It's become quite mature with, Agile Plus. Your value as a BA is being able to move fluidly between the two. You interpret business intent and you translate it into delivery reality. And this is where the Better Business Analysis framework comes into play. So we talk about and we train for enterprise and strategic analysis all the way through to release and operational improvement. And it's not about one document. It's about thinking about all the things that connect them all from beginning to end. And it's quite rare to do that. And a BA who can connect those dots is invaluable. The key deliveries that make that bridge up, right? I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to give away all our secrets today. Is a problem statement. That's the tool. It clarifies what you're solving, why it matters. The business case, which explains the expected benefits and how they're measured. The lean or business model canvas, which visualize how value is created, delivered, and captured, which is a great tool to manage up with. Smart objectives, turning the ambition or the ambition statements I've seen recently, or outcomes, into measurable, achievable targets. Then you use the context diagram. You define the boundaries and show what interacts with what. And each one of these planks is your bridge. And if you get those right up front, I've not mentioned processes. I've not mentioned requirements once here. This is important. Those elements, if you get them right, the strategy flows naturally into delivery at the right points. And so a lot of EAs don't play in those spaces or don't use those tools, but they're important. So we move to part 3, the tools that help you bridge the gap. I want to go into a little bit more detail about some of those tools and some others about how you might wrap some of your traditional deliverables into a greater set of tools. So the practical side, the tools and techniques that make this real are, like I said, the lean canvas and business model canvas. And I have a whole podcast episode on that. But they are brilliant for connecting the big picture to project scope. That's specifically what they're good at. And they are, if you want to be a strategic BA or have those conversations, this is a technique that execs can get behind. They will help you articulate, help you facilitate that articulation. You'll articulate the problem, the value proposition, the customer segments in one visual. And management teams love this. I often use this when kicking off new initiative, if I've been hired before it starts, very rarely. But if there are stakeholders who are struggling to align on what success looks like, this is a great technique. But I think it's just really good if you work with your strategist and say, let's just do this every time. And some companies have developed, business cases on a page. This is a little bit different. It's not around the justification, not around the cost benefit per se. You as a BA, you know about process modeling. That's what makes you a BA. BPMN maybe, swim lanes or service blueprints or whatever flavor it comes in. This is so important. And I was asked actually the other day, what makes a BA a BA? And I said a BA makes the two elements that are the minimum of a BA are managing requirements and doing process diagrams or process modeling and understanding that. And they're very practical, boring things, but, if you don't have those things, you don't really need a BA per se. We were talking about product owners and product managers. So, but in the process modeling space, once you know why and what, process models can help fill out the kind of low level what steps. And sometimes you can define that as a how. You can be, you can talk about semantics there, but it's the what and what in the system. So, depending on how low you go. So they're like your storytelling tools from top to bottom. And again, there's lots of episodes on this. When you visualize the current and future state, we talk about it as BAs all the time, but they make invisible processes and steps and people visible and help give a shared language. And it's also a very good technique. It's still one step below what I'd say an executive level would be interested in. And that's why you need to use all these different logs to get across the bridge. And one that's completely underrated in my mind is the requirements traceability matrix. Traceability isn't about compliance. It's about clarity. Where do these things come from? And it ensures that every requirement ties back to business objectives. In other words, you can literally draw a line from the CEO's strategy, right? The slide that they've just told the whole organization to a developer's user story. And that's powerful. And what people do is they outsource it. They just jump to user stories and they don't have their requirements matrix beforehand. You should not jump there. You need to do your matrix when you're doing your high level requirements and your mapping. And yes, as I talked about last week, Jira has some of these tools, which means we don't have to necessarily use an Excel spreadsheet this week or next week. But at the moment, I still don't see a valid replacement for a strong requirements traceability matrix. And to be honest, they can turn into capability matrices after the fact because all those requirements are required, not just in the project, they're required post-project, but that's a whole other chapter. And story mapping, I don't see it enough. Story mapping bridges customer experience or user experience, depending if it's internal or external, and delivery priorities, right? It helps you see the full journey, not isolated stories, and helps you make sure that the most valuable slices get built first. And that's what Agile's all about. Agile, for me, cannot exist without your story map. And finally, your requirements pack. For me, that is the bridge. It has all those things in it we talked about, and it's your bridge document. It connects strategic goals, process models, and solution design, or at least out to solution design. And it complement by a solution architecture document. And it completes the story from problem statement to process to product. And it's a really great way of doing it. And when I say putting it all in a pack, I don't mean 100 pages. I mean PowerPoint presentation linking out. And we give you that when you work with us. Part 4. These are the deliverables that show strategic alignment. Okay. If your deliverables don't connect to strategy, they're just documents. If they do, they become evidence of value. Okay. So I'm going to list these out. Number 1 is the strategic level. The deliverable is the business case. It defines why this matters. In the tactical level, the process model, it defines what is changing. You have the operational model, which is the level, and the deliverable is your requirements pack. It defines how we will deliver, okay, and what areas we're going to deliver in. And the control is the traceability matrix. It proves we're delivering the right thing. Every one of these ties the why of the strategy to the what and the how of delivery. Now, before you get all excited and copy what I've just said, here are some pitfalls, part 5, and these are the common pitfalls and how to avoid them. Number 1 is jumping to solutions too fast. We all the time, and this is something you manage up, manage sideways, manage yourself about this. The minute someone says we need a new system, pause and ask why. The best BA stays in the problem space longer than anyone else, okay? Can't stay there forever. You can't be a naysayer, but you stay there longer than anyone else. Number 2, deliverables with no business link. It's easy to create beautiful documents that no one reads. Always test your outputs. Do they trace back to strategy? You know, the testers might care, but if they don't link to strategy, then the project manager might not think they're necessary. Number 3 is assuming alignment means understanding. Just because stakeholders nod doesn't mean they really agree. Use your models, your maps, your visuals to show alignment, not just assume it. So, okay, make sure they understand that. You need to do what I always refer to as the Wiggles model, which is the red, amber, green. The higher you go up the chain, and then you need to provide a little bit more detail about the wheels on the bus. It's not minimizing or joking or dumbing down for the sake of a dumb audience. It is simply the amount of information that people at different tiers of the organization have to process, right? So one is, usually you're working on one thing, but you've got lots of information about it. At the bottom, at the top, they're usually looking at a number of things, but they can't process a whole lot of variables about one area. And again, SLTs struggle when they find themselves micromanaging. And number 4 is failing to validate benefits. We're not just analysts, we are value stewards. And value engineering is probably a good name for our future career. Make sure benefits are measurable and linked to the work being delivered. And sometimes I vomit when I hear about benefits realization because the benefits were made up in the first place or whatever. But just meeting those objectives is a good start. And finally, number 6, the future BA, a strategic operator. This is where the profession is heading. Gone are the days where BAs just wrote requirements. Today, the best BAs, the better BAs, operate like strategic system thinkers. We navigate both strategy and delivery. We use tools like AI, data visualization, design thinking to ensure every project contributes to real business value. We value engineer. And that's the sweet spot. That's the missing middle. You're not there to pass messages between strategy and delivery. You're there to connect purpose to progress. So next time you find yourself caught between the executive team and the developers, don't get frustrated, get strategic. The gap you're standing in, that's the place where real value is created or captured. You are the translator of strategy, the connector of context, and the guardian of value. That's the heart of modern business analysis. And that's what will make you a better BA. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.